There was a year that didn't announce itself as important, a year that didn't look different on the outside, but internally something irreversible began. I did not wake up one morning and decide anything dramatic. I did not make a declaration. I did not rebel. I just started noticing how much of my life was built around waiting to feel settled, waiting to settle down, waiting to find the one, waiting to feel certain, waiting to feel complete, waiting for a version of life that always seemed just out of reach. And slowly, quietly, without permission, I stopped believing. I stopped believing in the idea that my life, my joy, my heaven was supposed to begin later. Later when everything aligned. Later when I became good enough. Later when I finally arrived at some promised version of peace, some promised version of heaven, and the moment that belief started dissolving, something unsettling replaced it. Responsibility. Because if paradise wasn't waiting for me somewhere else, then what was I doing with the life I already had? Nobody tells you this explicitly, but many of us grow up with an invisible contract. It sounds something like this. If you endure enough, if you stay patient, if you do the right things, if you hold on long enough, then eventually life will make sense. Eventually everything you sacrifice will feel worth it. Eventually you'll be worthy of heaven. It's a comforting idea. It gives structure to uncertainty. It gives meaning to discomfort. It gives hope to the parts of you that are tired but still trying. But what happens when eventually never arrives? For a long time I had structured my life around the promise that one day everything would make sense. The confusion, the waiting, the sacrifices, the silence, it would all be justified, rewarded, explained. But then I started noticing that my life was passing while I was waiting for meaning to arrive. Human beings are very good at postponing themselves. We create timelines that feel safe. Once I get there, once this happens, once I become, once I get to heaven, then I'll rest, then I'll feel fulfilled, then I'll finally live. It's a beautiful illusion because it gives suffering a purpose. It tells you endure this now so you can enjoy something better later. And for a while that works. It keeps you disciplined, focused and hopeful, but over time it can quietly disconnect you from your own life because waiting has a cost. Not always visible, not always immediate, but over time it accumulates. You begin to live in fragments. Part of you is here, but most of you is projected into the future. You go through your days where you're not fully inside them. You experience moments, but you're measuring them against something else, something better, something fuller, something not here yet. Some heaven you've been promised. And slowly your present life becomes something you tolerate instead of something you inhabit. This shift for me did not happen all at once. It started with small discomforts. Moments where I caught myself thinking, why does this feel so empty even though I'm doing everything I'm supposed to? That question lingered. It wouldn't go away. It followed me into quiet moments, into conversations, into routines, into the spaces where I could not distract myself. And eventually, I had to sit with it. Hope is powerful. But misplaced hope can become a form of avoidance because if everything meaningful is waiting for you in the future, if your entire life is just a passageway to a heaven, then you don't have to confront how empty the present feels. You don't have to ask, am I actually happy right now? You don't have to examine, what am I tolerating? What am I postponing? What parts of myself have I abandoned in exchange for a promise? That was the year I started asking those questions, and I did not like the answers. At some point, the questions became unavoidable. What if I'm not supposed to be waiting? Not waiting for clarity, not waiting for fulfillment, not waiting for permission. What if this life I'm living here and now in this moment is not a prelude, is not a passage? What if it's the actual thing? What if it's the only thing? That thought destabilized me because it removed distance. It removed the safety of later. It forced me into the present. And the present is where responsibility lives. That's when I understood something. If you stop believing in a perfect future, if you stop believing in a promised heaven, if here and now is all you have to start building a meaningful present. And building is harder than believing. Belief is passive, construction is active. Belief waits, construction works. Belief comforts, construction demands. But construction creates something real. Awareness is not always peaceful or fun. Sometimes it ruins things. It ruins illusions, comfortable narratives, inherited beliefs. It forces you to see clearly what you were previously protected from seeing. And once you see clearly, you cannot unsee it. And that's where the shift began for me. Not when I rejected anything, but when I could no longer pretend that postponing my life, that postponing heaven made sense. Belief is light. Responsibility is heavy. When you believe that something better is waiting for you, you can endure almost anything. But when that belief weakens, you're left with a different reality. You realize if I want peace, I might have to create it. If I want meaning, I might have to define it. If I want fulfillment, I might have to participate in building it. And if I want heaven, I cannot simply rely on a promise. And that realization is not comforting, it's confronting. I stopped asking, when will my life start? And started asking, what am I doing with it right now? That question is heavier because it removes excuses. It puts you face to face with your own participation or lack of it. And participation is uncomfortable because it requires action, responsibility, choice. No more passive waiting, not emotional layaway. I didn't suddenly become somebody else. There was no transformation montage, just small decisions. Almost invisible shifts. I started to ask myself what actually feels good to me, not what looks good, not what sounds impressive, but what feels real. And the answers were simple. I found them in quiet moments, in very quiet moments. I found them in clear thinking. I found them in intentional work. I found them in internal work. I found them in honest conversations with myself. Building your own version of heaven doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels small. It feels insignificant. It feels almost disappointing because it doesn't match the grand idea you once believed in, the grand idea you were promised. It doesn't feel like arrival. It feels like effort. Daily, repetitive, uncelebrated. And that's where most people return to waiting. Because waiting feels easier than building. Waiting feels easier than confronting your pain, your laziness, your indiscipline, your cowardice. Sitting with it long enough for you to become your most trusted ally and teacher instead of this masked demon that you avoid. Something strange happens when you start building your own heaven. You regain control, not over everything, but over just enough. Enough to feel alive again. You realize you can create meaning, you can design moments, you can choose your response, you can plant your paradise. And that realization is dangerous because it removes dependency. You stop waiting for life to happen to you and start happening to your life. Life no longer happens to you, but from you. And why this is uncomfortable for some of us is because most of us don't want this level of responsibility, because it means no one is coming to complete the experience for you. No perfect future is guaranteed. No heaven is guaranteed. No external system will automatically give your life meaning. You have to participate fully, imperfectly, consistently, always. And that's confronting. When you stop waiting for a promised heaven and start to build yours, your entire relationship with life changes. You stop asking, what will life give me? And start asking, what can I create within it? You stop chasing perfect conditions and start working with what exists You stop postponing your experience and start inhabiting it. I stopped thinking of heaven as a place I had to arrive at, and I started to think of heaven as a state I could practice, as a state I had to practice. And paradise, a garden I had to cultivate. Not with perfection, but with presence, consistency, and patience at planting and pruning my own garden, at making my own paradise. Heaven stopped being this promised escape, but a state of mind and a state of life. If you've been waiting for your life to begin, for things to make sense, for you to get to heaven someday and for it all to be alright, consider this. Maybe nothing is coming. Maybe nothing needs to come. Maybe this right here is where it begins and ends. If you're watching this and something in you feels unsettled, this might be your year too. The year where waiting stops making sense. The year where belief shifts into participation. The year where you stop chasing a perfect future and start building a meaningful now. What if heaven isn't something waiting for you, but something you're supposed to participate in creating? If meaning isn't guaranteed later, then the quality of your life now is in your hands. That realization can be both terrifying and liberating. It means you don't have to wait for permission to feel alive. You can start designing moments of heaven right where you stand. And heaven stops being a destination and becomes a daily practice. Instead of imagining paradise as a future reward, start to treat it like a skill. Small rituals, quiet mornings, movement that makes your body feel strong, conversations that are real, creative work that gives shape to your thoughts. These things water your garden. None of it is grand, but it is intentional, and intention accumulates. And then life stops feeling like a waiting room and starts to feel inhabited. Not perfect, but present. And presence changes how we measure success. Fulfillment replaces fantasy. Before, success may have looked abstract, imagined futures, distant milestones, but when you start to build your inner world, success becomes tangible. You ask yourself questions like, did today feel honest? Did I protect my energy? Did I create something meaningful? Did I feel connected to myself? These questions ground you, and grounding replaces longing, because you're not chasing escape anymore, you are cultivating experience. And you notice that responsibility creates freedom. It sounds backward maybe. Responsibility is supposed to feel heavy, but when you accept ownership over your own peace, over your own heaven, freedom follows. Because you've been waiting for conditions to align. Because you've stopped waiting for conditions to align. You can create calm inside chaos, meaning inside routine, joy inside imperfection. Freedom isn't the absence of difficulty, it's the agency inside it. And agency is one of the most powerful emotional shifts a person can experience. Heaven can become your way of living instead of a place you're traveling toward. It can become a state you practice. Meaning is built, not found. Stop searching for a heaven, for a perfect future, and start to construct your meaningful present. Start to build. Start to cultivate your own paradise. Start to pay attention to what you consume, to what you tolerate, to what you avoid, and to what you actually enjoy. Ask yourself, what's one small thing in my daily life that actually brings me peace? And what does peace look like in your current life? Presence is underrated, but it changes everything. When you're present in your life, you notice more, you appreciate more, you experience more. When you're present in your life, instead of hoping and waiting and consciously moving every day towards the future, when you are present in your life today, every day, life stops feeling like something you're preparing for and starts feeling like something you are in. Stop postponing your life. Stop postponing your heaven. Stop waiting for paradise and start creating it. I'd like you to answer these questions carefully. Number one, What's the one thing you feel you should stop waiting for? Number 2, what's one small thing in your daily life that actually brings you peace? Number 3, what does peace look like in your current life? Let me know your answers in the comments. This has been the Human Mirror. Look closely, you are never invisible. I'll see you in the next reflection.